Hello everyone, welcome to Winthrop in the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is our State Senator Lydia Edwards. Lydia Edwards, thank you for joining us today. It's I think our fourth time coming on the show. Grateful to have you, really important to have you tell us what's going on in the state. Maybe that's a place to start. The state budget, where's that at these days? Where are we in the state budget cycle? And if obviously, most importantly, what's worth looking out for Winthrop there?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be on the show and to talk to folks specifically about what we're doing in the State House and how it impacts Winthrop. When it comes to the budget, there's a couple of three moving vehicles I think we should be looking at. The first is the SUP budget, which was filed by the governor. This is a supplemental budget, which is going to be fixing and adding in some holes, if you will, and filling in some gaps, but especially when it comes to our medical care and GIC, and assuring that we have the funds because the subsidies from the federal government have been reduced, and it basically impacted 300,000 residents of Massachusetts. So our priority is making sure that our access to Medicare and medical coverage isn't decreased in this moment. So we have a couple $100 million dedicated to that in the SUP budget.
Can I just pause you and ask you, so what you're referring to is the Trump administration cut medical spending and the state is trying to fill it in, essentially.
Correct.
And if the state didn't do anything, it would have affected about 300,000 people in Massachusetts?
Correct.
And how many is it going to end up affecting?
Well, we hope that there will be we're able to fill in the gap. We dipped into our reserves in order to fill in that subsidy. The other component is the other moving vehicle will be our regular budget that will be coming through, and I'm on the Committee for Ways and Means, and so there was an analysis, and we saw the budget and the governor's numbers, and what you'll see is that we are starting to plateau. We had a huge influx of money, if you will, during the pandemic. And for many people, it made a lot of our income seem that it's much higher than it is. And what's really happening is we're coming back to pre-pandemic income growth. So about 3% growth. You know, this is a very healthy economy, but it's not what we're used to. So for some people, they're going to feel as though we are in a slump. And what I would say is that we're just back to what we were before the pandemic. So reasonable, it's plateauing. That's not a bad thing. Things are balancing out.
Well, there's constant talk about the state losing population too. Is that happening? Is that also a factor in the budget situation?
No, it's not a factor. Matter of fact, we are losing populations, but due to lack of housing, due to affordability when it comes to childcare, or the two combined is just a lot for the average family. But the third vehicle, which is the fair share tax or the millionaire's tax, is continuing to outperform. I think the first time it was budgeted, when we were expecting income, we budgeted about $700 million. And it outperformed and returned over $1 billion. Then the next year we budget for $1 billion and we got $2 billion back. This is in the millionaire's tax. So what it's shown is that the 4% surcharge on money after the first $1 million that you make is an incredible boon to our economy, and it has been one of the best tools we have to, I would say, Trump-proof our budget. The money has to go to education or transportation. And this year we're looking at budgeting about $2.7 billion in income, and we are expecting actually to receive more than that actually. So we're being conservative with the money. And I want to be clear, a lot of the narrative about the millionaire's tax was that it's going to force millionaires to leave. They have not left. And we actually continue to raise a lot of money from it.
But is that money making up the losses that you described earlier in terms of health care and just the general loss of money from of the COVID and all that?
Yeah, so I'll repeat again. So with the Fair Share Tax Amendment, it can only go to education or transportation. So we can't borrow from one to pay for the other, or say because we are putting so much more money from Fair Share, we're able to underfund or overspend in another area. it stays within its own balance sheet and its own analysis. What it has been able to do is continue to support universal school meals, continue to support free community college and in-state tuition for all. It's proven to, we're going to actually come out with I think in the sub-budget, no, excuse me, the BRIGHT Act, which is going to be an act for the education, public education institutions, literally capital funds that we've desperately needed to fix the buildings of our state university systems and community colleges. And we will have the money because of the millionaire's tax.
Okay.
So.
And as far as a net positive or negative for Winthrop, and I realize that may involve a lot of different factors, but is there any way to sort of give people a sense as to whether everything you're talking about adds up to more or less for the town?
Everything I talk about, if there's more for the state, then I'll be fighting, and I'm sure Jeff will be fighting for more for the town.
Representative Turco.
Yes, Representative Turco, also known as Jeff. And the reason why it's really important is, we were able to get some earmarks and some specific local allocations in the fair share budget last year, which I was proud to put forth to our ferry, to put towards our schools. I've consistently supported the schools. I think at this point, if I continue and am able to support at the same level that I have been for the last several years, I would have contributed, if I can get the same level of $200,000+, $1 million just to our Winthrop public schools. So, and that's my goal. I firmly believe that education, public school education, free public school education is the foundation of any community. I'm a public school product, and I don't know that I would be where I am without my school teachers, my public schools, the after-school programs, band, being able to learn driver's ed, all of those things because of the public schools. And
I realize public schools are a state issue in terms of funding, but not so much a local issue, but there's obviously a big situation with the schools here in town. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of where the town is going to get the money to pay the teachers that it says it needs to do at the same time it says it can't afford it?
I don't have any particulars on the union negotiations or the affordability. I can say that as a state senator, I don't usually get that deeply involved in the negotiations for how teacher salaries are going to get paid. However, I am a firm supporter, for example, of the Retirement Plus, which is a statewide act to make it easier for people to pay and get the retirement benefits that they deserve, which fundamentally, if it's passed, those teachers are able to retire. Teachers who are retiring tend to be make more money in salary. It's actually cheaper for the state then to hire a new teacher at less money. So that's one thing that the state can do and should do, is push for the Retirement Plus bill to pass. Mm-hmm. The other thing is just direct infusion in money. I'll do my best to get money for the schools, whether it's for band instruments or if it's for the ELL, English language learners, school equipment. I will just continue to do that, and I work extremely hard and with the superintendent to figure out ways in which if we can get money for certain things in the schools, maybe that can free up money for the teachers.
Yeah, okay. So state-local relations, there's a whole bunch of things to talk about there,
mm-hmm.
3A being one of them, but one of the things you mentioned, well, I sort of mentioned, is I want to ask about is the fire stations. Winthrop's in the process of building a new fire station. There was correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a $2 million set aside to take down the old building, and that you put an earmark in for that, mm-hmm. But there's been some question as to whether that's going to go through. Can you update folks on where that stands and why?
Sure. So during the housing bond bill, I was the chair of the housing committee. And the many legislative members, myself and Rep. Turco, were able to put in some earmark or allocations of bonding money, which is kind of an IOU. We specifically put it, this $2 million was specifically pushed by me for the demolition and infrastructure at the old middle school site, which is becoming a fire station. I put $2 million aside. In the housing bond bill, there is no requirement for 3A compliance. However, in order to get the bond funds or the IOU, the city or town usually needs to petition to the state saying, could you release these funds in your next budget? And that really is at the discretion of the governor and the ANF. And many cities and towns who are looking to cash in on their IOUs from that bond bill. And so it's still back to the same kind of competitive conversation we need to have. And I'm pushing extremely hard and reminding the administration that 3A was not a part of the not a part of the requirement for that bond money.
Okay. Can I just, so people know, 3A, as we know, is 3A
MBTA,
is the state housing law, also knows the MBTA law. It requires most towns around Boston to add multifamily housing. Winthrop is one of the few towns not in compliance, and that's causing some problems for Winthrop getting state money. And what you're pointing out is that it's not clear why that should affect that. Though I thought the 3A law also had a general requirement to be in compliance with state laws as sort of as a general matter. Is that not the case, and is that potentially a problem there too?
I mean, we're seeing that it is a problem, that there is a kind of a discretionary out, if you will. But I think if I haven't gone on record, I'll go on record saying this. When it comes to public safety and when it comes to education, I don't believe that a town's compliance with 3A or any zoning law should be a hindrance to them getting much needed funds. Yeah. Again, I'm a product of public schools. I was that after school kid. I was that Head Start kid. And so the thought that if people in the town that I grew up in, which was also a very small town, 2,000 people, that they voted one way and the state didn't like it, that my after school funding could be cut. I mean, this is really going after very innocent people. So I firmly think that I get it on certain grants, maybe some infrastructure, I understand that, but when it comes to the kids in public safety, the firehouse, I'm very concerned.
Okay, that's a great place to take off then. It sort of as a general principle then, in terms of obeying or violating state laws, is that then the limit of where it should be, or are you in favor of any kind of legal action, which is I think we're now seeing, to force the town of Winthrop to comply with this law?
So that's two questions. Yes, I do think that there needs to be a minimum standard that towns, in order to function, need schools, they need fire, they need police. And I don't believe that unless their compliance with something that's related to education or public safety, if they are not compliant with certain standards for those grants within those left and right limits, then I don't believe you should be borrowing from other standards for zoning, for example. So if this town of Winthrop is not complying with the standards for an education grant through its education, then we should not be competing, or be competitive, or be awarded that grant. But if the town of Winthrop is not complying with a zoning mandate, then I don't know that you should be cutting off their education money. Okay. I do know you shouldn't do it. So the second question is, am I in favor of a lawsuit?
A legal action to force the town. The state attorney general has talked about.
No, she didn't talk about it. She filed a lawsuit.
Right. I'm asking where you stand on that. Whether that's an appropriate response to the situation here.
I think it is the response. I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I know that she's following the law, and she's also following her warning letter that she sent us and sent to Winthrop in June. Mm-hmm. So this is not a surprise. Yeah. This was so. There's nothing to cheer for or to cry about. It was coming, and we knew that if we didn't comply, we were going to get sued. So I don't.
Right. Okay. I hear. As you know, at the most recent town council meeting, there was a decision made by the council not to join a counter lawsuit by the town against the state on this, and there was also an announcement made.
The counter lawsuit was by not the town.
Right, by private citizens.
Okay.
There was a lawsuit by private citizens. The town council was asked to join that lawsuit. Uh-huh. And technically they said it would have been done by the town manager, but in any event, they decided not, on a 4-4 vote, decided not to join that lawsuit. But they also did announce that the town council president was going to be meeting with with state officials, the head of the body known as the EOHLC, that administers 3A, as I understand it. That meeting happened last week. I gather you were there.
I was.
Is there anything you could maybe tell people about what you saw at that meeting and whether that moved the ball forward at all in getting us toward a solution?
What I saw in that meeting, well, first of all, the meeting had been scheduled by Jim and Tony. Jim Lettieri, the town council president, and Tony Marino, the town manager. They had scheduled a meeting before the lawsuit. So I want people to understand they didn't ask for a meeting after getting sued. They were already in open channels of communication and talking with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Then Monday at 3 o'clock, I think it was 2 weeks.
A week, no, it was last week.
Sorry. The representatives from the Attorney General's office, myself, Rep. Turco, of course, members from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, all got together, and I thought it was a productive meeting. What I heard consistently is that there is no closed ears or doors to Winthrop, that the channels of communication are continually open and wanting to work with us as much as possible to get us to either compliance. And I think that that's important to emphasize. It was a very collegial meeting. It was a very professional meeting. There were questions about compliance with the condo, or the impact of compliance with MBTA and our condominium laws, or local, what is it?
It's been raised in the case of Seal Harbor. The argument has been made in Seal Harbor that if they pass this, it will somehow affect condo rules, and that argument has been kicked around, I suppose, is the way to say it.
Yeah, and I think that, there was a real emphasis that there hasn't been a real clear answer to that, such that, it's on the letterhead of the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. It is an FAQ, sort of, and I think the AG kind of tangentially refers to it, but, could they be more direct and succinct? Absolutely. There was also some questions regarding the rescinding rights, that if, for example, a town is found to be no longer in compliant, then the agency could direct them to be compliant. And that's a real question of what do you mean by direct?
Does that mean impose their own zoning map on the town?
That's exactly what I was getting to, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
So the question is, what does that mean? And the fact that that is an open question, that you could just decide we're not compliant unilaterally, and then that you could make the decision, does that mean that? And does that mean that you could then unilaterally just go ahead and tell us what our zoning is? To which I understood they did not believe that that was their power. And I said, okay, well, I think it's important that it's very clear then, because if I read this as a layperson who's already skeptical of big government, that's a concern for me. So a lot of what our conversation was with them is saying where a lot of our constituents are confused or skeptical, and how they could be better at responding and clarifying their position so that people can make an informed decision. And I think that they were open to that, and I hope that they do respond that way.
I just want to clear on two things. One is that on the Steel Harbor, it sounds like we're going to maybe get a declaration from the state making clear that this won't affect the rules there.
That was what was asked.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if it's coming.
Right. And on the other, I know I'm going to mix it up. The rule about the idea about rewriting zoning maps. You're understanding, therefore, the state is saying that it will not rewrite
Not at all.
zoning maps.
That's not what I said.
Okay, I just want to be
I'll
clear
be very clear.
All right.
In a compliance letter, they say you have complied, small town of Winthrop. You've complied. Therefore, here are the certain conditions, and if you change your zoning at one point, you need to let us know that you've changed your zoning so we can confirm that you're still in compliance. And then also, if the guidelines change in a way that you are no longer compliant, we will tell you that, and then you need to become compliant. And if you don't, we could rescind your decision that you're compliant, and then I think the wording is direct you to be compliant. And that's what does that mean? Question.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's what we were asking,
Okay.
and I think that that's the point. Why would you leave something so wide open?
Yeah.
People are already skeptical. They don't trust you. They are concerned about, the overreach of government. And then this is when I'm complying, you're telling me there might still be a ball move forward. So The issue is when that issue came up, the Attorney General and the Executive Office, as I recall, said actually we would still be required. We couldn't mandate something to you. You would still have to go through the normal zoning approval process of your town. And I mentioned, respectfully, that's not clear in this language.
I see.
Okay? So I don't know if we're going to get something in writing that makes that clear. I'm not sure if we're going to have a decision that makes that clear, but that is what they said. Is their intent is not to come in and just change the rules and dictate what's going on. But I think it would be very, very firmly to their advantage if they put that in writing and made that very clear.
I see, because there are people in town who think that the state might ultimately come in and put a new zoning map on Winthrop, and you're saying that that was brought up and the discussion was left with you asking them to be more clear on that, on where that stands. Is that the right way now?
No.
Okay, not there either.
Again, just to be clear, we zeroed in on the specific language in the compliance letter, of which some people in the town are concerned. Literally, of what does it mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean that you can unilaterally say we're not compliant and unilaterally make us zone a certain way?
Yeah.
That's it. And they responded, it doesn't mean that. Those things.
Right.
To which I said, then it needs to be a little bit more clear.
Yeah, I think that's how. But okay, I think it's good. Okay, that's good. That's good. Sounds like good progress. Now we're waiting on the state on both of those things.
Yes, we're hoping that they would come back, and I'm wanting to make sure that I addressed everything, because I know Jim Lettieri did an excellent summary in the transcript. So I don't know if I've gone beyond what he said or if I've not said enough.
I think we're good.
I think
there's other news articles too. One is about the Globe had a couple pieces in the last few days about the harbormaster, and this is something we've been talking about before as well, which is the idea that Winthrop has a harbormaster. It's a person who's in charge of doing various things with regard to boats in the water, and it came out apparently that they were not enforcing the requirement that people with boats pay an annual fee. And the Globe article was about the Suffolk County sheriff paying for a person to work in Winthrop to work on that problem. And the Globe article perspective was that this was county money, which mostly comes from the state, that's being used to perform a function in Winthrop to the benefit of Winthrop. It's drawing in money for Winthrop, and it was criticized. It was questioning whether that should be done. So I'm sure you know the background out of it. I'm just wondering what you see in that situation. Is it appropriate for the county using state money to hire somebody who then works in Winthrop? And there's also not only the assistant harbor master, there's also another county official who works in the Winthrop Police Department helping the Winthrop Police coordinate between town and state, which seems like valuable things, but the county's paying for it. Do you have a take on that going on, whether that's the proper role for the county, or who should be paying for it? I know it's complicated, but I'm just looking for what you can throw at it.
All right, so to be clear, our sheriff's departments are funded overwhelmingly by the state. So all of their positions are having state money. And if their jail is, for example, in South Bay, you can argue that Boston is getting a benefit of state funds going to specifically just Boston because that's where the jail is located. So I don't know that there's a real controversy about state monies being used by the county office in local areas. What I understood the controversy or the concern or the question to be was, is this a function of the sheriff's office? Mm-hmm. And if you're going to go beyond the functions of the sheriff's office in a hyper-local way, should the local town be paying for that? Or should the state and the county? Yeah. And I would remind them that while the harbor master is in Winthrop and focused on Winthrop predominantly in the waters around there, it is for a state function. We have a ferry system, right? And so that is where he's located, is at the ferry stop,
right?
Or the harbor master. And as we are expanding that state money, that state infrastructure, and that state safety requirements, we have a harbor master there, I think, to meet the moment.
Yep.
So I'm not disagreeing that we have someone local here as a harbor master. How it became under the sheriff's office, that's going to have to be a history lesson that either Rep Turco or Jim Lettieri gives me. But I will say when I went to the ferry stop and I met with the harbor master and he talked about what he was doing and how they can actually help with the function of the ferry and the safetiness of the ferry. And a place where people could be while waiting for the ferry. That's state infrastructure and state dollars.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I have to correct because the harbor master, the term use of the term harbor master because the town police chief has made very clear that last year, as a result of I think it was a federal bill that was passed after the George Floyd killing, they created an entity in Massachusetts with an acronym that had a bunch of recommendations. One of the recommendations was that all harbor masters are law enforcement officers because they do law enforcement work. They therefore has to be under the police department. Therefore, technically, the police chief is the harbor master, and the person we're talking about is a deputy harbor master.
Deputy harbor master.
And it's not just a terminology thing. It's the reason I think they want to say that it's important is because this is somebody who's actually doing legal work, and you're pointing out
law
that
enforcement and safety. Yes, it's public safety. Part of that conversation. I think that's great.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, you're pointing out that the harbor master does more things than just enforce the boat regulations. And I think the discussion coming out of this Globe series was more about that particular role.
And that's okay to question that, but I mean, we don't get to question that. And also, as we're building up our ferry system, getting our own boat, and so on and so forth, the role of the harbor master will increase. Right.
Which is I was going to talk about the ferry, but let's do it now. So the ferry. One thing that occurs to me is the ferry is now on hiatus. The Winthrop ferry, the East Boston ferry. But the Hingham ferry is running.
Yeah.
Why is their ferry running and ours is not?
That has been one of our biggest fights. If we want year-round here, we don't see if Hingham can go year-round, we firmly believe we can too. So that's been one of my goals.
Got it. Okay, good. That's good to know. And then the question is, once it resumes, I know last year we had a difference in that it went straight most days into Boston. When it resumes again, is that going to be the status quo again, or is there any other sort of thing that you see happening with the ferry and, for that matter, the bus system coming up that we should know about in Winthrop?
Not that I know of. I mean, our goal is to continue to advance the ease of payment for the ferry. We now have that one tap system for that. Well, you can use your credit card in any place. And I'm really hoping that the one tap can come our way. It might be easier, or you're using the scanners on board. But what I find is that we need to make it easier for you to seamlessly go from one mode of transportation to the other in payment. And also, I'm very disappointed that we are still paying Lynn's rate, which is $6.50 one way. Lynn pays that, and Lynn goes into open ocean water. We are nowhere near as far as they are. So those are two things that I think I will be focused on. Year-round fair equity. East Boston pays $2.40, and then also fair efficiency in payment.
And the Logan stop too, which we talked about earlier too, which is the question of why our ferry stops in Logan.
The bane of your existence. You can't stand it. I put it in. I was proud to put it in, and I think it's maybe the scheduling of it, but for the way it goes. But it is designed for a commuter's schedule. So the most efficient way to Boston is in the morning, and the most efficient way to Winthrop is in the afternoon.
No, I get that. The question is why is the ferry stop in Logan when it doesn't seem to pick up anybody or drop off anybody? Does it make sense to either omit the stop in Logan or do something active by Logan to get some passengers on it so it makes some money for the Winthrop run?
I think we need to be advertising the boat more in Logan, and I think we also, I've said this to, my goodness, what is it, Director Perry? That we need, what's frustrating to me is that we have three lines, the Quincy, the Winthrop, and the Hull Hingham, all stop at the airport. And they all leave essentially from about Long Wharf area of the north, not the north end, but of the waterfront area. All kind of leaving at the same area. There's not one sign that says boat to airport on anything, and nor is there a schedule. And I think that if you were to do that, it's 10 minutes to the airport. there needs to be some signs and a schedule that shows you can get any one of these boats at this time and get to the airport.
Okay, all right. Before we run out of time, I haven't begun to talk about immigration. That's a big thing that you're working on, which is, so we've had issues in town, although maybe not as much recently. Maybe if you could tell us where things stand as far as you know it on the sort of the activity level of immigration enforcement in Massachusetts and in the Winthrop area in particular, and the work that you've been doing to help make things better.
Right. So a lot of immigration work has been, as you know, here locally we had an incident with 2 workers who were basically taken by ICE. That's in Winthrop. In East Boston, we regularly have ICE in the courthouse, which impacts Winthrop because that's our courthouse as well. And so what we're finding consistently is that the ripple effect of that is people aren't sending their kids to school, people are missing doctor's appointments. We're less safe, they're not going to the police. And so there's been several ways in which we've been dealing with this. Credit where credit is due to Mayor Wu, to Mayor of Somerville, and several other cities and towns that have pushed through local executive orders that basically say city property and city buildings shall not be used for ICE in any way, shape, or form. Also, credit to the governor. She also implemented an executive order that does the same thing with state property and basically shows that they cannot, prepare, make ready on state property if they're going to be going to pursue anybody. And those things mean a lot. It's a signal to a lot of people that the executives, the mayors and the governor, they're not standing, or they're not standing down, they're standing up to protect us and to assure that we are a commonwealth where all are welcome, and I'm proud of that. In terms of legislation, I filed the Protect Our Courts Act, inspired by what happened in East Boston Courthouse. You can look up the incident. A man was taken out by ICE. By the time he was shoved in the car, his shirt was off, his shoes were off, and no one's safer because of that. It was just, and it really breaks down the sense of trust between actual law enforcement and public safety trained individuals, our local police, and ICE, which I don't know how many times I have to say this, they don't do, when you see them 9 times out of 10, it's for a civil infraction. It is not for chasing down drug dealers. It's not for doing that. They're enforcing a civil issue. Our police are enforcing criminal matters. The FBI, other entities are. So this would basically make it very, not so much hard, but it would essentially require a higher standard if you're going to arrest somebody in a courthouse in Massachusetts.
If ICE agents were to do that.
Yes, if ICE agents for a civil matter.
Okay.
For a civil matter.
Okay.
Also, I've filed legislation to make the process for applying for a U and T visa. Those are trafficking visas, and forced labor or slavery visas. It would make it more efficient and easier for law enforcement to certify that they are victims of particular crimes. They are not giving out immigration status. They're simply certifying that the person is a victim.
So a person who's applying for immigration, for entry into the United States, that's what you're talking about?
I'm talking about a person who's undocumented here,
okay.
Who has been helpful as a witness in a crime or is a victim of a crime.
So just briefly, before we run out, there are 2 bills, and I think you had a hand on at least one of them, if not both. One is questioning the formal cooperation between the state and federal government on immigration. Is there a bill on that? And also the issue of masks and the question of whether they can or should be worn in the state, and whether that applies just to ICE or to all agents, all police agents. Can you talk about either or both of those? Okay,
I'll talk about the masks first. So also in my Protect Our Courts Act, I actually prohibit masks from anybody in the courthouse, so that we're not targeting just federal agents. We're basically saying no one's going to be wearing a mask unless it's for a health issue like COVID or something like that. And that's really where the controversy is around the mask ban, if you will. Can you ban people from wearing masks around the whole Commonwealth and free? Probably not. Can you ban only federal agents and only specific kinds of federal agents from wearing masks? Also very, very on shaky constitutional ground. When it comes to the 287G agreements, those are the contracts between ICE and local governments. There is a movement to basically say that except when it comes to the Department of Corrections, local police or any other department should not have an agreement with ICE.
Okay, would that cancel existing ones or just prohibit new ones from coming in?
The one filed by the governor would prohibit new ones.
Okay.
We only have one with the Department of Corrections.
Okay, and should that existing one be removed as well?
No,
Why is that?
because that is where many of my constituents' family members are staying right now. And if we were to remove that agreement, many of them would be staying in Alligator, Alcatraz, or sent to Buffalo, New York, or areas where they will not be seeing their family members regularly. And we have no-cost calls here in our systems. We can, as state legislatures, because this is a state facility, we can come up with a detainee bill of rights and conditions in which a person who's there just for civil matters can be treated with respect and dignity.
There's so much more to get to, but Senator Lydia Edwards, thank you again very much for the time today. Grateful to have you here.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.